So, when you think about global power, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's probably stuff like aircraft carriers, maybe some fighter jets. But what if the new face of power looks less like military hardware and more, well, more like a legal document? Today, we're going to explore China's strategy of finding and controlling economic choke points. You know, those supercritical, narrow spots in the global supply chain where just a little bit of pressure can have a massive impact. All right, let's get into it.
On one hand, you've got the old-school symbols of might. We all recognize those. But on the other, you have the tools of this new strategy, things like export laws, massive loan agreements, and controlling shares in key global industries. For the last few decades, China has been playing the long game, methodically getting a grip on these choke points, and it's giving them incredible leverage, not with bombs, but with balance sheets.
So let's start with the first part of this strategy, and that's controlling the absolute foundation of modern industry. And I'm not just talking about any old resources. We're talking about the fundamental building blocks of our entire technological world. Let's take silver, for example. Just recently, China reclassified it as a strategic material, which means they put it under strict export controls. Now, this move is a really big deal because, as you can see, China controls somewhere around 60 to 70% of the global supply. They're already the world's biggest user of it, and now they're really tightening their grip on who else gets it.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory cooked up in an economics department. The impact is very real. The move was so significant it got Elon Musk to comment on it, and he just said flatly, "This is not good. Silver is needed in many industrial processes." You know it's serious when the guy building our electric cars and rockets is sounding the alarm.
But silver, as important as it is really just one piece of the puzzle. China has an even bigger chokehold on another group of critical resources, rare earth elements. And this is where it gets really interesting. The true power isn't about digging stuff out of the ground. No, it's all about the processing. Okay, so when it comes to just mining the stuff, China's dominance is pretty clear. They account for about 65% of the global total. And that is a huge share, don't get me wrong, but it's not the whole story. The real leverage, the actual choke point, is in the next step.
And this is the real kicker. This is the true control point. China handles a mind-boggling 85% of global rare earth refining. See, for decades, while Western countries kind of shied away from this really expensive and environmentally tricky process, China leaned in and invested heavily. So now, even the rare earths that are mined in the US or Australia often have to be shipped to China just to be made usable.
So, why does this matter so much? What's the big deal? Well, because these elements are literally at the heart of almost every piece of modern technology you can think of. We're talking the motors in your electric car, the guts of your smartphone, the hardware in massive data centers. But here's the crucial part. They are also absolutely essential for top-of-the-line military hardware. Everything from fighter jets to missile guidance systems. If you control the refining, you basically have a lever on almost every advanced industry on the planet.
Okay, let's move on to the second pillar. And you'll see how this all starts to stack up. Because controlling the raw materials is one thing, but what if you could control the technology that's built with those materials? That's even more powerful. And that brings us to what might be the single most dangerous economic choke point in the world today: advanced semiconductors.
I want you to just look at this number for a second. 90%. That is the share of the world's most advanced computer chips that are all manufactured on one tiny island, Taiwan. Think about that. This single point of failure is one of the most extreme, concentrated points of industrial power anywhere in the modern world. And really, when we say Taiwan, we're mostly talking about one company, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. You know, you might think that big tech companies like Apple or Nvidia or AMD make their own chips. They don't. They're the architects. They design these amazing things. But the physical manufacturing, the actual incredibly complex production of these technological brains is overwhelmingly done by TSMC. So the crucial point here is that the world's AI, our data centers, and the most advanced military hardware all depend on this one company in this one specific location.
So we've got the materials, we've got the tech. The final piece of this puzzle isn't about a single product, it's about controlling the physical networks that move goods and information around the world. This is the third pillar, building a global network through infrastructure, investment, and ultimately, influence. And the main tool for this is China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI.
This thing is massive. We're talking over $1 trillion invested in more than 140 countries to build the very arteries of global trade: ports, railways, pipelines, you name it. On the surface, it's about helping developing nations, but it's also about securing strategic positions all over the globe.
But here's the catch. These Chinese loans for these projects, they're often really fast and come with fewer strings attached than a loan from, say, the World Bank. But what happens when those shiny new ports and railways don't make enough money to pay back the huge loans? Well, that's when the debt itself turns into leverage.
The Hambantota port in Sri Lanka is the textbook example of this. So Sri Lanka takes on over $1 billion in loans from China to build this really strategic port. But the port, well, it never made enough money. By 2017, Sri Lanka was drowning in debt, and they had no choice but to hand over an 85% stake and a 99-year lease to a Chinese state-owned company. No invasion, no conflict, just a loan agreement. Okay, so let's pull back and put all of these pieces together on the economic chessboard, because when you do, you start to see the full picture of this strategy. It's a really clear three-part playbook. First, you control the inputs, the critical minerals and rare earths that our entire industrial base is built on. Second, you control the technology, those advanced semiconductors that act as the brains of the modern economy. And third, you control the network, the ports and railways that are the arteries of global trade, using debt as the tool to lock in that influence. And all of this brings us right back to our opening question, but now it has a lot more weight. In the 21st century, is the future of global power going to be decided by balance sheets and not by battleships? It's definitely something to think about.